Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Growing But Grounded with Hector and Tara.
Hmm.
Last week we introduced this series by talking about the pain of parent and child estrangement.
Hmm.
Today we want to take things a little deeper. Later
Hmm.
on today, Tara will share a testimony. One of the biggest obstacles to healing is the fact that two people can live through the same experience and come out with different point of views.
Hmm.
Now, we have to remember that doesn't necessarily mean that anyone's lying. It just often means that each person saw it through their lens, through their
Hmm.
own experience.
Through their own eyes.
Hmm.
hmm I think that's something we just really don't talk about enough.
Right.
Most people believe their memories tell the whole story, but memories are shaped by our experiences, our emotions, our personalities, and even our stage of life.
Yes.
A parent remembers what were trying to accomplish, and a child often remembers how they felt.
Mm.
Those aren't always the same thing.
Yeah, that's true. Parent a parent will remember the responsibility,
Mhm.
right? They
Mhm.
look back and they think about the fact that they were working overtime, paying
Mhm.
the bills, they were making the mortgage payment, they were
Mhm.
taking children to school, or they were homeschooling them, they were
Mhm.
making sacrifices.
Mhm.
Many of them remember would talk about the fact that they were feeding their children, what it took to pay for the, especially now with the high prices of food.
Right.
They were just working on putting everything, holding everything together.
Mhm.
And they think, I gave everything I had. And,
Mhm.
and, and that's exactly how they felt.
Mhm. Yeah. Most parents don't wake up and hoping they're going to fail. That's the
No.
last thing on their mind.
Hmm.
Most are doing the best they know how with the tools they have at the time.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that they were perfect. It just simply means that their intention and their outcome aren't always the same.
No.
Sometimes we've intended to communicate love, but our children experience something very different.
Yes,
Mhm.
we often communicate love through service and
Mhm.
providing.
Right.
Um, but adult children remember things through experience.
Mhm.
You know, when we talk about how adult children feel, they don't remember the bills. They don't know
Mhm.
what the mortgage payment was. They don't remember that you stayed up with them all night long while they were sick or you took
Mhm.
them to the hospital.
Mhm.
They remember experiences, how they felt,
How
whether
safe they
how
felt,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
Mhm.
how safe they felt, whether they were heard, whether they were accepted,
Mhm.
uh, whether they were emotionally connected to you. Those are the
Mhm.
memories that stick with them, and
Mhm.
that may be the estrangement, the reason for estrangement.
Right. So sad. And sometimes a parent says, I was working so hard for my family.
Hmm.
And an adult child says, I know, but I
You
really, really missed you.
you
I
weren't
really
there.
wanted you home. I really
Mhm.
wanted to talk to you.
You were
And
absent. Yep.
neither statement automatically cancels the other.
Hmm.
One is describing a sacrifice, the
Providing
other is describing this loneliness that they
experience.
felt.
Hmm.
Both can be true.
Yes. And that's
Mm-hmm.
important for us to remember because different perspectives aren't always different truths. It's just different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is where a lot of the conversations break down because one person will say, I was there for you. The other one will say, you weren't. One
Mm-hmm.
is basing things on providing, the other one is basing things on how they felt, that they felt
Mm-hmm.
alone. And so maybe the question we should be asking instead of who's right, we
Mm-hmm.
should just be asking, how did you feel? What
Mm-hmm.
was your experience like? How did
Mm-hmm.
I fail you? And
Mm-hmm.
that's a much different conversation than blaming the other one for
Mm-hmm.
what happened.
Yeah. One of the greatest gifts we can give one another is allowing them to tell their story without immediately trying to defend ourselves.
Yes.
Listening doesn't automatically mean agreeing.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just simply saying, I didn't realize you experienced it that way.
Right. How you felt. Hmm.
And those words alone it can rebuild trust. And I can give you a personal example of this from my own life with one of my children. There was a season when my mom was really sick. She was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. She'd moved into her home so I could care for her. And at the same time, I was homeschooling, working, volunteering at our church, and taking care of my family and just
Providing.
trying to keep everything going.
Hmm.
When I look back on that time through my eyes, I remember a mom who was just trying desperately to juggle everything. I was caring for my dying mother while I was still trying to be a wife, a mom, a teacher, an employee, and everything else that life required of me. I was truly trying to do the best that I knew how. But here's what I haven't had to recognize. When I remember everything I was carrying, my son may remember what he wasn't receiving from me.
Experience.
I wasn't emotionally there for him the way he needed me to be. And at the time, I just didn't recognize it. I was so busy surviving that
Hmm.
season and trying to take care of everyone that I didn't see what my son might have been experiencing.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, I loved him and I cared deeply about him. I was just overwhelmed.
Hmm.
But from his perspective, maybe he felt like mom wasn't there for me.
Yeah.
And maybe it felt like I didn't care or the other things that were important to him. I
Hmm.
didn't recognize that.
Right.
And that's where I've learned that two things can be true at the same time.
Hmm.
I can look back and have compassion for the woman I was, knowing how much I was carrying, while also having compassion for my son and recognize what that season may have felt through his eyes.
Hmm.
I don't have to argue with his experience in order to explain mine. And he doesn't have to erase everything I was, carrying for his hurt to
Hmm.
matter. That's what seeing through each other's eyes really, really mean.
Yeah, because we have to remember that pain does shape memory.
Mm-hmm.
Pain has a way of shaping how we remember life, though. Uh, if someone grew up feeling emotionally unsafe, they will remember many situations through that feeling because
Mm-hmm.
that's a strong feeling. Pain is a strong feeling.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean every memory is completely objective. It just means pain became part of the lens. That's
Mm-hmm.
the lens that they use. And of course, parents have lenses too. We view things through stresses,
Mm-hmm.
financial pressure, as some of the things we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
marriage struggles, health concerns, et cetera, et cetera. We get older and we obviously have more, we can have more health concerns at that time. Those things influence memory as well.
Yeah. Sometimes
Hmm.
parents look back with so much regret. Sometimes children look back with hurt.
Yes.
And, sometimes both are grieving the
Hmm.
same relationship
Yeah.
just from opposite sides of the
Hmm.
view,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And that's why compassion is so important.
Yes, because compassion is the first step, I believe, to healing. Because healing begins with the curiosity instead of defensiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying you were wrong or you treated me wrong, maybe the question we should be asking is, help me understand where you were,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of trying to win an argument,
Yeah, it's not about winning.
no, maybe we're just trying to learn
Mm-hmm.
where that person was at the time that they felt
Right.
that way.
Mm-hmm. And I've learned something through all of this.
Hmm.
Being heard doesn't automatically fix everything,
No.
but not being heard almost always makes things worse.
Yeah.
People long to know their experiences matter.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that every conclusion is correct. It
Correct.
just simply means that they want to know somebody is willing to listen.
Hmm.
And here's another part of my story about my son that it's much harder to talk about. About 4 years after my mom died, my son began experimenting with drugs.
Hmm.
I tried to get him help, but at the same time, there were so many other changes happening in our family. We moved onto my dad's property. We became involved in a new religion and new religious environment, and our lives changed significantly. And looking back, I can see that there was a lot happening around us during that time when my son was already struggling.
Hmm.
And that is where seeing through somebody else's eyes becomes very uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Because as a parent, I can tell you what I thought I was doing. At the time, I believe some of the decisions we were making were right.
Hmm.
I believe some of them were what God wanted us to do.
Hmm.
But today I can look back and say that some of those decisions were very wrong.
Hmm.
There were things that we put our son through that I deeply regret, and there was a lot of trauma.
Hmm.
There were decisions we made as parents that I wished with everything in me I could go back and change, but
Hmm.
I can't. And my son hasn't spoken to me in 7 years. So when Hector and I talk about parents listening to their experiences of their adult children, this isn't theoretical for
No.
me. I'm
Hmm.
actually living it.
Yeah.
I can explain what I believe back then. I can explain the circumstances. I can explain what I thought my intentions were,
Hmm.
but none of those explanations erase what my son experienced.
Yeah.
And maybe part of healing as a parent is becoming willing to say, I see things today that I couldn't see then.
Right.
Not because someone forced us to admit were horrible parents,
Hmm.
but because growth requires us to be willing to look at ourselves honestly.
Correct.
I love my son. I wish I could change parts of our story.
Yeah. You can't change it, right? But what you're doing is you're moving forward, and I can see it's still affecting you. But and that's what allows us to grow is the fact that we can recognize that you can still pray for him. You recognize the mistakes that you made, right? Your experiences. And I think the most important aspect of it, you'll agree, is that you're leaving the door open for healing.
Hmm.
There's room for reconciliation,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
And it begins when we finally admit that maybe everything wasn't right, and I don't have to judge it
Right.
through your eyes, and you can see things through his experience. So if you're a parent watching today and you're feeling the way that Tara is right now, I just want to encourage you with something. Don't be afraid to ask difficult questions. If your adult child is willing to talk, try to listen without blaming or defending.
Right.
Maybe there's later time for that. Maybe there's later time when you can talk about the perspectives. But initially, for the process of healing, you need to listen with an open ears and
Hmm.
not be offended or don't try to
Right.
correct them.
And remember, listening isn't admitting you were a terrible parent.
Correct. Yeah.
It's simply saying, I love you enough to understand your heart.
Yes.
That's a beautiful place to begin.
That's a starting point.
Hmm.
I love you enough to listen to you. And to adult children, if you're an adult child watching and maybe you're estranged from your parents, can I encourage you to, if your parent is generally trying to understand, allow room for growth.
Hmm.
Um, Believe that people can change, and
Hmm.
many times they do. Sometimes they don't, right? There are
Hmm.
circumstances where
Right.
they don't change, but most parents do want to change and they want to have a good relationship with you. So
Hmm.
don't allow what happened yesterday affect your tomorrow.
Hmm.
Leave room for hope.
Absolutely. And that doesn't mean abandoning healthy boundaries.
No.
Boundaries can be necessary.
Hmm.
Healing isn't pretending everything is okay.
Right.
Healing is choosing wisdom while remaining open to what Yahweh may still do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Looking forward, one of the things we want to say is that, and one of the things we both believe
Hmm.
is that healing usually doesn't begin with perfect words. You,
Hmm.
you may not say this the right stuff, but it begins with humility, and humility can lead you to apologize. The willingness
Hmm.
to, even if you don't believe you need to
Hmm.
apologize, right?
Hmm.
And maybe you're not sure what you should say. Just pray about it,
Hmm.
and let your child tell you about their experience
Hmm.
without judgment for sure.
Hmm. None of us really see the whole picture. We
No.
all have blind spots.
Mhm.
And the more we recognize that, the more compassion we begin to have for one another.
Yes.
That's so important to realize we both have two sides of the story, right?
Yeah. So next week we want to talk about something that often sits underneath estrangement, which is emotional trauma,
Hmm.
as many of us experience that. We'll discuss how unresolved wounds affect both parents and adult children, and why understanding trauma can help us respond with greater compassion instead of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
because that's
Yeah.
so important.
So, if today's conversation reminded you that every family has more than one perspective,
Yeah.
we hope that it also reminds you that understanding doesn't erase truth.
No.
It also often helps us, understand
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
So thank you for spending these few minutes with us. We're grateful that you're on this journey with us.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And hey, join us next time for Growing But Grounded with Hector and Tara.
Hmm.
See you soon.